Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Central Wisconsin Book Festival for our event with illustrators Steve Jenkins and Robin Page this morning. My name is Elizabeth Lutz. I'm one of the festival organizers. You can say hi in the chat with your name and where you're joining us from this morning. You can turn on your camera if you'd like, but please leave your microphone turned off and use the chat for any questions. I'd like to take a moment first to thank our festival sponsors with a short video.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 Central Wisconsin Book Festival. Before we begin, we would like to thank those organizations and businesses that help make this year's festival possible.
Our presenting sponsors and benefactors this year are
the Community Arts Grant Program and Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin,
with funds provided by the Wisconsin Arts Board,
the Community Foundation,
the B.A. and Esther Greenheck Foundation,
the Marathon County Public Library Foundation,
Ware, and the Covantage Cares Foundation.
Our 2021 sustainers are Wisconsin Humanities,
with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities,
the Portage County Public Library Foundation.
Other supporters include the Marathon County Public Library,
the Portage County Public Library,
McMillan Memorial Library,
the Friends of the Marathon County Public Library,
the Marathon County Historical Society,
Whitewater Music Hall,
Wisconsin Public Radio,
and Janke Bookstore.
Thank you so much to all of our sponsors and supporters.
And thanks to you.
Thanks to you.
And thanks to you.
And thank you to you.
Thanks to you.
all of our authors, all of our readers.
And thanks to you for being part of the Central Wisconsin Book Festival.
Thank you to all of our sponsors for allowing us to host such great events this year. I'm going to turn it over now to Marie Martins, who will introduce our speakers.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Marie Martins. I am an elementary school librarian in the Wausau School District, and I'm very excited to introduce our guests because I feature their books with second graders every year, and they absolutely love them. So this is Steve Jenkins and Robin Page, a super duo of nonfiction books with fantastic artwork and words too. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Thanks for having us. So we're going to show a little presentation, and in it we will talk a bit about where ideas for our books come from. That's our co-worker back there, Henry, and we'll show you a little bit about how we make books, how we go about making the illustrations, and so on. So let's see if we can start here. I'm going to share our screen. Just a few images at the start, a few of our illustrations. This is one of Robin's for a book about octopuses. She does her illustrations, her collage illustrations are digital. She does it in the computer. This is one of mine. Mine are actually cut paper. Pieces cut out and glued down. This is one of Robin's from a book about bird beaks. Tyrannosaurus rex. Some animal skulls. This is one of Robin's illustrations for a book called Who Eats Orange? Is that right? Who Eats Orange? Saber-toothed tiger, shoebill stork. This is Robin's. If you can hear our dog drinking, he's a very noisy drinker. So this is me as a child. I was crazy about animals. I think I'm reading a book, or at least looking at the pictures in a book about dinosaurs here. One of my early animal illustrations. Robin grew up on a farm. It's her on a horse. So she was around a lot of animals too. She had hands-on experience. It's one of her early animal projects. She got an A+ on it. So Robin and I met in college. We eventually got married. We were graphic designers. We had an office in New York City, and we enjoyed graphic design. We'd probably still be doing it, except that we had a baby. Robin actually had the baby. And then a couple years later, we had a baby, this Paige on the left and Alec. Not sure what happened there. Sorry, a little technical issue. So we started reading to them every night when they were just probably not even a couple months old. We would take turns, and spending all that time reading children's books got us thinking that we would enjoy trying to make a children's book ourselves. We had some of the skills that were required because of our work as graphic designers. This was pre-computer days. So Robin went first. She made this counting book, which is based on a Japanese paper folding technique. So you can look at it like a regular book, but if you pull the covers apart, it turns into a three-dimensional paper sculpture. It's pretty neat. So I wanted to make a book too, but I wasn't sure what to write about. And then it kind of occurred to me that our son Alec, here he is, he's conducting an experiment on static electricity here. He was always asking, what's the biggest animal? What's the toughest animal? Questions like that. He was very interested in superlatives. So I made this book, excuse me, called Biggest, Strongest, Fastest, basically to answer his questions. Here's the blue whale, the biggest animal that's ever lived. But I realized just putting an illustration of the whale didn't really communicate its size. And for young readers, talking about how many feet long it was and how much it weighed is still a bit abstract. But I included this little key here with a silhouette of the whale and of an adult human, which really shows you how huge this creature is. More clearly, I think, than the facts and figures. The African elephant, largest living land animal. So in talking about where book ideas come from, they can come from a lot of different places. This photo was taken at the San Diego Zoo when my older son and I were outside the gorilla paddock. And there's this life cast of a gorilla's hand. And almost everybody that passed by held their own hand up to compare the size. And I thought that could be a book. So this is the book that came from that experience, called Actual Size. And all the animals in the book, or parts of animals, are shown life size. We take a lot of photos in museums and zoos. This is Robin in, I think, the Field Museum in Chicago. This photo is a Siberian tiger in the Denver Natural History Museum. And this is the tiger that I illustrated for Actual Size. It's the largest cat. The ostrich, of course, is the largest living bird. There she is with her egg. I included the eye of the giant squid, and at the time, no one had actually seen a live giant squid. So this is an illustration, not mine, but an illustration somebody did of the giant squid. And this is the kind of reference that I used for my illustration of the eyeball, which is the size of a basketball. Since then, here's an actual photo of the giant squid that was taken by Japanese scientists on a submarine a year or two after the book was published. Can we do this one?
This is Jamie, our youngest child, who's 23.
Yeah.
Sorry, 23 now. So we did a lot of camping and outdoor stuff with him. And so there he is holding his frog.
You have to use the mouse. Okay. It doesn't work.
So at nighttime, we were still reading all the time, but Jamie really was all about Where's Waldo. So we spent way too many hours finding those things. I don't know if anybody else has done that, but it's sure. Tiring. So that gave us an idea for I See a Kookaburra, which is discovering animal habitats around the world. And we realized a lot of times especially with all the books that we have, the habitats are shown, like what kind of plants and everything's there. But often the animals are just right presented in front of you. And that's not really how animals would be in a habitat. They'd actually be quite hidden. So here's the animals in a desert. And then you turn the page and there they are, just exactly in the same places they were with their descriptions. And there they are again. in a pond. And in a tidal pool. So one thing about this book was, remember all of the Richard Scarry books with the Goldberg?
Yeah.
So in every environment, actually ants can exist in the environments that we showed. So there's also an ant that a child could find. It's pretty hidden, but if they wanted to.
This is a, excuse me, this is a blobfish. This poor creature is often voted the ugliest animal in these internet competitions. And whenever we show this to schools, of course, it gets quite a response. We came across this, Robin and I, and we thought it would be interesting to do a book of animal portraits. But we like for our books to have some real science, some real information, and we weren't sure what we could talk about. But we liked the idea enough that we collected these photos of animal faces and put them up on the wall in our studio on a tack board. And everyone that came in would talk about the personalities of the animals, or they would say, this one's sad, or this one's angry, or whatever, which of course isn't probably true. It's just projecting our own human qualities onto them. But we realized that what we could do in the book is talk about why animals look the way they do. And they always look the way they do, or almost always, because it helps them survive in some way. But just to make it a little more interesting, we decided to interview the animals, and they talk to us and tell us why they look the way they do, which of course is fantastic, but at the same time, what they tell us is scientifically accurate. Dear Egyptian vulture, why no feathers on your face? Are you sure you want to know? Really? Okay, I'll tell you. I stick my face into the bodies of the dead animals I eat, and feathers will get pretty messy. So it's a red fan parrot on the right there. Dear red fan parrot, where'd you get that funny hat? I'm not wearing a hat. Those are my feathers. When I'm frightened, I fan them out to make me look larger and more intimidating. Here's a horned frog with this enormous mouth. And of course, the blobfish. Dear blobfish, what on earth happened to you? Being on dry land instead of in the ocean is my problem. At home, deep in the sea, I look like just another fish, but I'm out of the water and gravity is smushing me. Here's what I usually look like. So you can see the blobfish, it's not really that odd looking. I mean, it's not maybe a beautiful fish, but we always felt like it was a little bit unfair that we would take him out of the water and then judge him on the way this fish looks when he's being smushed. So sometimes book ideas are literally underfoot. This is our cat, Theo, and our puppy. Here's Jamie when he's a bit younger. We have 2 golden retrievers. This one's quite old now. But I started thinking about the fact that kids know a lot about animals like tigers and great white sharks and Tyrannosaurus rexes, but not necessarily so much about these predators that we share our houses with. You know, we have this 75-pound creature with long teeth that sometimes sleeps in our bed. And it's kind of interesting how this thing that was a wolf a few thousand years ago became part of our family. So I did this book called Dogs and Cats. It's a 2-sided book. So on one side, it's about dogs, and when you flip it over, on the other side, it's about cats. I wanted to change the title, but I knew that would freak out librarians to have a book with 2 titles. So I just changed the size of the type, and it almost looks as if they're 2 titles, even though the title is Dogs and Cats. So the book is symmetrical. On one side, if there's a spread about what's special about a dog, its senses and so on. Then on the other side, it's the same information about a cat. And all this is very clever and everything, but the problem is when you get to the middle spread of a book that has 2 sides, it has to work right side up and upside down, which I couldn't figure out for a while how to solve that problem until I realized that our animals were often in this kind of position. So I put them on a rug in the middle of the book, and when you flip the book over, it still kind of makes sense. Here's a photo of our office, much cleaner and neater than it usually is, than it is right now. There's Robin at our computer. here's me working on an illustration. And there's the drawing table I was at from my computer.
This is a book about how animals move. And like before, we gather a lot of books before we actually venture on doing one about the way animals move. So we had lots of animals moving books here. What we realized was, just like children or us, we don't just move in one way, we move in multiple ways. So this book kind of works as a film strip and sort of describes two actions that move into two actions of another animal. So animals move in different ways. They swing, a gibbon swings. A gibbon also walks. Lily, I don't know why we didn't just say lily trotter, walks on lily pads and also dives. A blue whale dives, but he also swims. An armadillo swims, but also can leap straight up. There's close-up of some of the books, and we end up marking a lot of stuff, both for reference and for information. So it ends up with a lot of post-its through all these books. This is just notes, quick notes about how many different ways animals move, what animals we might include. Then we sort of do this crazy little thumbnail thing, trying to figure out what the sequence would be. I realized that eventually post-its actually made it easier to move the book around. It makes sense. Early writings with edits. Those are presented to the editors, the writing, and then the editor comes back and makes suggestions. I think in this case, I think Steve's made his own suggestions. Quick drawings I made to see which animals might be in the book. A quick drawing of actually putting it in the book, like just like one big word and nothing else. These are a reference that Steve uses to make the whale. That's his pencil drawing that he'll Xerox many times and cut through to construct the whale. We have this great big file cabinet with all different papers, and they're all color coordinated, but all the way down. That's it's a paste. It's not a paste paper. It's a
print, actually, of wood. Yeah.
Yeah, print of wood. Paper that's been recycled that has a bunch of little words in it, and that became the whale.
So somewhere we read that coyotes and badgers cooperate to hunt prairie dogs. They can catch more prairie dogs if they work together, which we thought was kind of an interesting fact. And we decided that there was a book here, a book about cooperation, about symbiosis, where animals cooperate and it helps both of them in some way. So there's the badger and the unfortunate prairie dogs. So badgers are quite efficient diggers. They're good at digging into prairie dog burrows, and coyotes, of course, are agile. They can catch any prairie dogs that might try to run away. There's another view of some of our books. These are almost all about animals. So we realized that unlike most of our books, which feature one illustration of an animal with a caption, that if we wanted to tell this story about how animals cooperate, we needed to show a sequence of images. This is from a Neil Gaiman book called Coraline. And we love this kind of graphic novel format. We decided to use that for our book, which is called How to Clean a Hippopotamus. Some of Robin's early sketches, which she kind of formalized on a graphics tablet. And then she used these to design this spread, which kind of tells the whole story of how these two predators work together. Meanwhile, while she's working on the design, I'm doing my own sketches that will become sort of templates for the cut paper illustrations. Prairie dog, coyotes. I didn't need to finish the whole animal because it's going to be contained in this frame on the page. That's why the coyote has no back legs. Badger, some more recycled paper there. So here's what the final spread looks like. And it kind of tells a story of how the coyote spots prairie dogs, goes off to find a badger, leads the badger back to the prairie dog colony, and they work at different entrances to the burrows and either dig in, catch a prairie dog that's trying to get away from the coyote, the badger might, or vice versa.
Growing up on a farm, we had chickens, of course, and then my friends were starting to get chickens all around me. So I became interested on like, what if I could make a chicken book? So this idea, I mean, it was already there, but the idea for the title of the book came from a neighbor whose chicken often escaped, and the neighbors would call around and ask her to come get the chicken, bring it back home. So a chicken followed me home. Questions and answers about a familiar fowl. A chicken followed me home. What do I do now? So as Steve said earlier, I do quick drawings on a tablet, graphics tablet, that I'll bring into a design program. And in the case of, I think for both of all of our books, we often make a dummy, just a pretend book, so that we can read it and make sure that it works like we want it to work, or to improve it. There's all the reference for the drawings. There's my pencil sketch. And because I'm not cutting, I'm doing it in the computer, I actually scan everything in. So I scan the paper in, and I draw a key line on that tablet over my pencil drawing. And I'll use that key line to fill in the different parts. And I can manipulate the paper so it looks more like feathers. And I can change the color too, which is kind of nice. That's pretty much how it comes together. A little slower. What will my chicken eat? And in this case, I've used copyright engravings. Yeah. How do I keep my chicken safe? Will my chicken lay eggs? And an interesting, I mean, this is 260 eggs, and that's the average number of eggs a hen can lay in a week.
No.
In a year, sorry. But in the world, chickens lay more than 3.5 billion eggs every day. That's a crazy number. There's me with a chicken.
Speed up a little bit. So here, we've put in some of our more recent books just to kind of show you what we've been working on. This is a book about animal display. Go look at me. So some of the reasons animals perform displays or have bright colors or so on. These birds are dancing to attract a mate. The hooded seal there on the left has this basically a balloon that hangs out of its left nostril, and it's usually uninflated unless the seal is trying to establish territory on the beach or maybe attract a mate. And then he can inflate it and shake his head back and forth, and it makes this wobbling sound like you make when you shake a balloon back and forth. This is a pretty recent book. What do you do if you work in a zoo? We wanted to show what zookeepers do, but focus on the animals. So you just see, hands or pieces of a zookeeper, not the whole thing. Giving an elephant a pedicure, brushing a hippo's teeth. In this case, weighing a python.
we were visiting some museums. I guess this one may be Boston.
Yeah.
And we saw this exhibit where the birds were holding these little, I guess, little informational. And I thought, well, I kind of loved the way that looked and thought, well, maybe I could use that in a future book. So of course we have the picture, and after a couple of years, it showed back up, and it became kind of the interest of doing the beak book, although in the end, it didn't survive the cut. So you can see it there. I put in, it's the name of the bird. And that was an early comp that I sent to the editor. But the editor said, you know, that doesn't really give us that much information. Why doesn't the small illustration actually show the bird doing what it's doing, which made much more sense. So here it is. This beak is for straining. So you can see the ruddy duck doing that. The toucan, actually, his beak is for cooling, which is an interesting.
So after a look at me, we decided to do a book about kind of the opposite, how animals hide. So this is about animal camouflage. It's called Look Again. And what's interesting about this book, and different from any other books we've done, is that we both did the illustrations. So Robin created the environments digitally, and I created the animals with cut paper collage. So this works a little bit like I See a Kookaburra. When you turn the page, the environment goes away and the creatures are revealed with some information. This is a forest floor, some of the animals that might be found there. This is, I became interested in infographics. You remember the little diagram of the blue whale with the human, which was done a long time ago, but I've often included that kind of element in books. So I decided to do a whole book about animals as an infographic book. So there are things like this. The pie chart there shows the number of different animal species. And mammal species are that really little thin orange stripe on the left side of the pie chart. The big red area is the number of insect species. So you can see that most animals are insects. And within that book, this decision tree, I came across some really interesting information about armadillos. They have actually quite a few adaptations for escaping danger. So I decided to make this decision tree, which kind of follows an armadillo and his thoughts as it's trying to escape danger. So I'll read it. An animal is headed my way. Does it look dangerous? And of course, in a decision tree, you can answer yes or no, and depending on your answer, you're directed in two different ways. So if the answer is no, it doesn't look dangerous, then I'll keep rooting around for insects to eat. But what if the answer is yes, it does look dangerous? Another question, does it see me? If the answer is no, I'll freeze and hope it doesn't notice me, which is one of the armadillo's defense mechanisms. But if the answer is yes, the next question is, can it outrun me? No, then run. That was a pretty simple decision. But if the answer is yes, do I have time to dig a burrow? Armadillos can dig really fast. And they don't have to completely go underground. They can just dig a little shallow pit and sort of hunker down in it, and their shell will help protect them. So if the answer is yes, then of course, I'll start digging. If the answer is no, however, is there water nearby? If the answer is yes, I'll start swimming. Now, armadillos, as it turns out, are pretty good swimmers. It doesn't necessarily look like they would be. And there's another cool thing about armadillos in water. When an armadillo comes to a stream and it wants to cross it, it makes a decision based on how wide the stream is. If it's not too wide, the armadillo will blow out all its air and walk across on the bottom of the stream bed and come up the other side. But if it's too wide and the armadillo can't hold its breath that long, then it will do something different. It'll actually gulp air into its stomach, inflating itself, making it buoyant, and then it'll paddle across on the top. So if there is no water nearby, can it bite through my shell? If the answer is no, then I'll curl into a ball. What if the answer is yes? I think the armadillo is starting to run out of options here. Can I startle it long enough to get away? If the answer is yes, then I'll try leaping straight up into the air. This is something they do. They can jump about 3 feet off the ground, straight up, which could obviously startle a predator, a coyote, or something that's sniffing around. But if I can't startle it long enough to get away, oh well. That's it for the armadillo. And that is our little slideshow. If I can find my cursor here. Did I? No, here we are.
All right. Yep, we're here. That was fantastic. I do notice we have some viewers that have joined us. So if anybody has a question, they could type it in the chat, or a comment or question, or they could raise their little hand. 2 observations I off the bat noticed, or was thinking about, is I didn't realize in showing the kids these books every year, the 2nd graders, that you each were making illustrations that look so similar, even though they're created in 2 different ways. It's almost seamless, like you'd never guess that was made one way or another, or almost. And so I was wondering how you each decided to do the illustrations the way you do them.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I was interested in collage because I did it when I was not doing children's books. Before I did children's books, just doing illustrations for book covers and stuff, I became interested in it. And then I found over the years that it's kind of therapy, because I spend so much time on the computer anyway, writing and stuff, that to be able to stand at a drawing table is a good thing. In Robin's case, a few years ago, we were asked to do some murals for a children's museum in Virginia. These are 8-foot high panels. And so actual cut paper collage would have been a real problem. You just can't find sheets of paper big enough. And so we realized that doing it digitally was what made sense. And Rob and I did those together. She kind of developed that technique of working with pencil drawing and then a key line on her graphics tablet and filling it. And by the time we'd done all those murals, she'd gotten pretty good at that technique. And that's how she started using that for her children's books.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then a follow-up question for both of you, because Robin, you also scan the paper, is how do you find all those different papers?
Well, they come from a lot of different places. I mean, some of them come from art supply stores that have imported paper collections. I mean, most of them are foreign, like from countries that have a tradition of paper making, Japan, Thailand, Italy, Mexico. A few of them are domestic, and then there are also papers that are just kind of random. Like I've used the paper that comes under a pizza when you order a takeout pizza, and it's sort of got char marks on it from the oven and everything. And I've actually used that. Sometimes wrapping paper, or just a paper bag that has an interesting texture.
Yeah.
So I have quite a collection. You can kind of see back behind me that flat file back there. That's the one that was in the presentation. It's full of paper.
Okay. Yeah. That recycled paper too. I never looked closely at that crocodile to see that there were little words in there that it was like that. Yep. I see we have a question in the chat. This is from Tara. It says, are there any other forms of media you enjoy using or have considered using in your books?
When I first started working on ideas for children's books, I was thinking that I would do pencil illustrations. So I was kind of inspired by Chris Van Allsburg.
Oh, yeah.
But then I quickly realized that I would never approach that level of competence. It just wasn't not a gift that I had. But having been a designer for so many years, I think for both of us, working in collage makes sense because you're dealing with scale and contrast and visual rhythm and that kind of thing. Same thing that we might be dealing with, doing a brochure for a company or something. So I guess the short answer then is no. I think I'm probably sticking with collage, and I assume Robin is too.
And you're both great at it, yes. I see another question. What animal do you think is not appreciated enough?
Good question.
It is. It is. Well, there are a lot of underappreciated animals, I think. I mean, you could start with dogs and cats. I mean, I think their emotional intelligence is always surprising to me. How the fact that they're pack animals, they have this ability to really sense when you're unhappy or, and then almost any wild animal that you can think of, if you do research, you find that they're capable of surprising things quite often. Chickens, even we don't like to think about it too much because we eat them, but are actually pretty intelligent. We're working on a book about birds right now, and we found that chickens have about 20 different calls they make that have very specific meanings, and roosters, if they spot, say a hawk, spot some danger, have a special call they'll make to warn hens to get to safety. But if there's a rival rooster out in the open, then the rooster that sees the hawk won't make a sound. It'll just be quiet and hope that maybe its rival gets carried off. So, that's pretty sneaky, really.
Yeah. Good. Yep. I see. I have two more questions. This Tara says, has Henry ever chewed up your artwork?
No.
No. Our son was working remotely here, and that puppy is probably very capable of chewing up a lot of things, but Henry's pretty good.
Yeah, I think between us, Robin and I lost maybe 5 pairs of shoes to our son's dog before we got smart
2
enough.
new ones. No, 3 new ones.
And I just got a book at school that the parent wrote a note. We're so sorry the puppy grabbed it so fast. Tell us how much it is. We'll replace it. Yeah.
So the dog eats my homework, really, is not.
That could happen. Yep. I see another question, and then I'm thinking of one too. This one says, why are books your chosen medium for presenting this information to children?
It's a good question. I mean, partly it's because it's what we know how to do. I mean, obviously you can do amazing things with video and photography, but that's just not our competency. We were making books for other people when we were graphic designers, and Robin was making books for herself, just little art books for years before we made children's books that got published.
I think it became when we had our children and we were like reading other people's books, and we thought, I want to make a book for them, kind of thing. So I think it's probably more that it came out of that.
Yeah. And when you're doing, for Robin or for you, Steve, it's probably different, but when you're making a page or an illustration on the page, about how long does it take you to do that?
It can vary a lot, but I mean, like a porcupine for Steve could take forever. So it depends on how complex they are and how much information you think you want to show about the animal.
A lot of times the research
Yes.
Takes longer than the actual illustration itself. Trying to find a lot of different views of an animal, or maybe taking photos of the animal ourselves, doing preliminary sketches.
Yeah, that pencil drawing takes me longer a lot of times than actually doing it in Photoshop, like or with the key line thing. It's hard to get it right.
But once you get to that point, can be anywhere from a couple hours to a couple of days, depending on the complexity of the illustration. I think it's probably similar for Robin.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just need to check in because I see it is 10:45. So I'm checking in.
Yes. If anyone has any final questions, we can probably take one final question. I'm going to put in the chat a link to our survey. If you wouldn't mind filling that out for us, it'll help us plan more great events for next year at the Central Wisconsin Book Festival. Thank you, Steve and Robin, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I see one more question, not to interrupt. It says, what honor or award have you received that you're most proud of?
I guess we got a Caldecott honor for a book called What Do You Do With a Tale Like This? And that was probably the most significant award that we've gotten.
Yep. Yeah, in the world of books, to get a Caldecott or Caldecott honor, and that book is set for life. It probably will never go out of print. And it gives you some name recognition for your other books, things like that.
Yeah.
It definitely launched.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And know that there's lots of kids right here where we are in Wisconsin that really enjoy your books and love checking them out. Even though they typically like to see a photograph in a nonfiction book of an actual animal, they love your books too. They're so similar to a photograph, and they're fun and funny as well. And it teaches them a lot. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
I also wanted to ask what the best way for readers to get in touch with you is.
Probably through our websites. Mine is Steve Jenkins Books. And there's a link on there for email. And Robin's working on her site right now. I'm not sure it's up. Is it up?
I think an old one is up, but a new one's going to be up.
Yeah,
very soon.
and she'll have a link on hers as well. It's Robin Page Books. Robin Page Books.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
everyone for
Thanks.
coming.
Thank